We're away.
Good evening, gentlemen, and any ladies who are unfortunate enough to be looking at us.
Friday night.
So Bryan on Friday night wears a hat, so I thought I'd better match one. This fabulous little item featuring badges which include such notable, luminaries as the Array, Chamana Mao. I bought in Tiananmen Square not too long ago. So you can call me Chairman Mel for the next few moments, but I'm going to represent the views of the red end of the population against the one percenters. That's just my natural inclination.
Now you've taken your hat off.
Yep.
But Nick, I have to keep mine on because that light shines on the top of my shaved head.
And that stuffs up the camera,
and it actually reflects too much. And I mean, just looks ridiculous. So, okay, yeah. We got a Friday night, and we did actually talk about doing something a bit longer.
Yeah, we did actually.
And actually, we have to, in the course of who we mention and who we say, really nice, that we're able to talk to you, we have to talk about Justin's mother.
Yeah?
Joan.
What is Joan's?
Well, she's on Facebook and she watches everything that's being said, and I actually put it on her page.
Oh, so she was the lady who made the comment. Good lady. And
yeah, she is actually, she's got some really interesting stuff on her Facebook page. And we just have to say that actually really appreciate, and Joan actually pops in and looks at the birds and she loves all that stuff, and so that's really good. And not only that, but from what I can tell, she absolutely loves her sons to bits.
It's a great place to be. Yep, I've got parents still. You might have noticed that I'm not as young as Bryan looks, and my parents are 88, my father, and 81, my mother. She's on council like Bryan was, or she's on what's called community board now, but she's been doing it for the last, for the last 30 years. So at the grand old age of 81, I'm pretty impressed by her ability to hang out with all those political types and still poke the borates. So, what do you think?
Oh, no, I mean, that's amazing. And it, it's each to their own,
Yeah.
I mean, your mother's obviously got more gas in the tank, whereas mine basically started to run on empty a couple of years ago.
Well, in case you guys aren't aware of Bryan's connections with the local council, he's about the only sane man in Wellington, and he's probably about the only sane councillor we've had for the last 20 years. And for Bryan to have stood them for that long is a remarkable feat.
I'd have to actually agree with you there, Nick. Yeah. I found it quite tiresome the last couple of years, and I actually was kind of like a long distance runner, really.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about.
No.
Because that's pretty boring, really, compared to some of the stuff that's been whizzing around.
So to give you a hint, guys, we're going to talk about the renminbi and the this whole BRICS business and what it's doing to the world. And there's a degree of desperation I've noticed watching the sites online. I have a good look at the BBC every now and again. I tend to understand that the BBC reports the headline properly, but doesn't actually give you the real detail. So I watch RT and Al Jazeera and things like that, and it would appear that this whole Russian, Chinese, Eurasian thing and the BRICS thing is, especially with them coming up with their own SWIFT system for international clearances, is really knocking these Americans around, and we're at that stage where the so-called free market capital, and probably I'd do well if this kind of happened in New York, Wall Street nowadays, because they seem to be pretty much a command economy. If they command that the stock market goes up and the banks can print money and everyone believes it. And it's very, very similar and reminiscent to what happened, those last few years of the Soviet Empire. So what I'm seeing is basically a system in crisis. And the one I looked at most of all in the last couple of days, you've all been worried about the, you know, very much the Islamic challenge coming out of the Middle East and so on. And I personally think that that is very much, while it's real, it's not what you should be concentrating on. The Greek debacle is very much more in line, and you might have noticed that the last couple of days the European Central Bank opened a building in Stuttgart, cost them 1.3 billion euros, and the same day as they opened it, two things happened. They criticised from the opening the Greeks spending 15% of that money, that's 200 million euros, on poverty alleviation legislation and relief through Greece, which flew contrary to what the bankers were telling them they wanted to do. They wanted them to suck eggs still and pay up. Outside, there were people called Blockupy, which seems to be a bit of a combination of a rejuvenated Occupy and the old Black Bloc anarchist groups. They reckon anywhere between 10 and 20,000 of these people outside, 350 arrested. They torched a lot of vehicles and had a running fight with the cops while the people inside were having a bit of a Marie Antoinette moment. And I'm looking at that kind of thing happening in Europe, and I'm just wondering how aware you guys really are about it, because from what I see, it's not getting reported on your media, it's getting reported on all the alternate medias.
Yeah. So the main media, popular media, runs a continuous sort of circus of distractions.
Yeah.
And the really important stuff just doesn't get up on the radar. So, true what you say. And I've actually kind of like just numbed out recently, Nick, because there's just so much going on, and I'm thinking to myself, life is short, brutish and nasty, and can I extract something out of it that will actually help me, you know, in a personal way? And I don't mean this just, you know, in terms of financial, you know, I'm interested in my own well-being, my equilibrium, my peace of mind, and the things, you know, finding the priorities and getting that balance about what really matters. And I mean, like...
Well, it's funny you say that, Brian, because when I mentioned this thing about the money, the 15% of the poverty alleviation, I went back to some basic grassroots principles which you and I live on, which are, how would we handle that ourselves? What is our sort of internal moral compass telling us is the right thing to do? Is the right thing to do to keep taking blood out of a stone and causing suffering while you're sitting there? I mean, we had that classic one on Facebook the other day where Mr. Rothschild was sitting there and he was complaining that the austerity hadn't been done hard enough, and I thought, you've always eaten with a golden spoon your whole bloody life, you prick. You've never actually been anywhere and seen poverty.
He was cheeky, he's cheeky.
I couldn't actually believe that. I just sort of thought, your moral compass has never been set. You haven't got one because you've never been given one.
Yeah.
You know, and I just sort of, I'm at that point of saying this does matter. It is the stuff of reality, but the thing is, as a population, as a group, we're charging very quickly towards a cliff, and there won't be an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. It's just not going to be there.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing is, I totally agree with you, Nick, but the other problem, of course, is that I'm, like I think a lot of people, you know, I kind of got, you know, one foot in this camp, one in that one, and a hand in that one, and then there are all these hooks that, you know, get into you, and they're pulling you this way and you're pulling you that way.
Yeah.
Some of it's driven by, you know, really powerful stuff like the messages that have been given to you through the media day after day.
Yeah.
And all that stuff that tells you about what you're missing out on and so forth, you know.
Yeah.
And so you really, you know, you've got to sometimes just shut it all out and have a quiet time just reflecting and thinking about what's serious, you know. Because a lot of the stuff really, you know, we could waste a lot of energy on it and it won't actually do much for us, right?
Yeah. So I mean, coming back to the original contention, what's important, I think you do have a problem over there with the Islamic sections of your population. And I know it's dreadfully politically incorrect to talk about that stuff, but I think you should be talking about it, and I think you should be loud and vociferous, even if you're saying things which might prove to be wrong, right, or indifferent. You've got to be able to express it.
Yeah.
To actually get that calm and feeling about things. You know?
And I like people are reluctant to want to talk. It was quite interesting. I was saying to Nick, I don't know if you guys have seen it on, and they are free to air television. They ran a program about the FBI, and there was a group of people when J. Edgar Hoover was in charge of educated people that deliberately broke into the FBI offices and started publishing some of this information they've been collecting. And I don't think the FBI's changed that much, actually, quite frankly.
No.
You know,
No.
the deck chairs have been rearranged, but
I tell you what, one of the things which cracked me up, sometimes I'm awake at night, and so I flick through, it's terrible being a digital bloody junkie, but I get onto YouTube, and I got this thing. It was George Galloway, who you probably know, love and dislike, and love and do whatever, whichever you. George doesn't sort of do anything in between.
yeah.
But he was apparently he was banned from Canada.
Yeah.
And there was this a Canadian Jewish man who was obviously very pro-Zionist. And he was having a go at George Galloway, describing him as a terrorist, and they had actually managed to get the Canadian government to ban George from coming to Canada to speak, as he does every year on some speaking tour, on the basis that he had said things in support of Hamas, which he did not deny, and he gave very good rational reasons for doing that. And it was just so interesting to see that this particular guy who claimed that George was not representing people's freedom of speech was actually denying George for freedom of speech, regardless of how you felt about the issue. And I just sort of thought, how fucked as a society we are when we have people trying to shut other people down for a dissenting view.
We claim that we have freedom of speech, but just don't say too much. And the other thing is the amount of surveillance that's taking place, Nick. I mean, like, for example, they can, if your computer's on, if you've got your computer on, they can actually just listen to what's going on.
In the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, do the same on TVs as well, believe it or not.
And
but there's something which I don't know if you guys are onto, but you need to Google it. TOR, the onion ring. It's called the dark web.
Yes.
And this is a way for you and I and everyone else to actually send stuff through the web which cannot be encrypted or listened to. Sorry, decrypted or listened to. It completely buggers the surveillance authorities, and it's always one or two jumps ahead of the people who want to listen to you. And ironically, the thing about the onion ring, Tor, the dark web, is that it was developed specifically by the people who want to listen to you, to actually stop you listening to them. So it's rather good. It's got out there.
Well, you see, there are. So there's all this mix of stuff, going on. And I mean, like, I kind of got past the stage where I don't worry too much about anything, but I am aware. The other thing, I guess it's got something to do with their age, Nick?
Yeah.
But we just aren't prepared to take life too seriously now.
No, we can't. And I told Bryan a really good story about that. It involved a person who unfortunately met their end. I think they got stuck in a fence and somehow, basically strangled them. And they went off to see St. Peter, and he's standing there at the pearly gates, and said St. Peter, "You're taking a while letting me." He says, "Yeah, I'm just having a look for your clock." And the guy looked over St. Peter's shoulder, and there was a wall of clocks. And he said, "Those clocks." And St. Peter says, "Yeah." He says, they're your lie clocks." He said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, every person has a clock on this eternal wall, and every time they tell a lie, the minute hand advances a minute." And he looks up and he says, "That one up there still on midnight." He says, "Yeah, that was Mother Teresa of Calcutta." Well, the one next to us only gone forward 2 minutes. Yeah, St. Francis, says St. Peter. He was a pretty good man, you know. And anyway, he looks around, he's looking for his own clock on the wall, and he notices that there's a clock missing. And he said, "So there's a clock missing there?" He says, "Yeah." He said, "Jesus took that away the other day." He said he was complaining it was rather hot. So he came and he picked up Barack Obama's clock and he attached it to his wall fan to keep him cool.
Well,
sorry.
That's all okay.
That's the religious part of the show done. You know? We've got to do that to you. So, yeah.
I'm not offended. I find it actually quite amusing listening to some of the Nick is forever doing analog metaphor and you know, take